A dragon begged for help. The truth they found was devastating. Part 1. The signal came from nowhere. It appeared on the sensors of the Deep Space Survey vessel Horizon like a ghost rising from the dark between stars. Commander Lisa Monroe stood at the center of the bridge and watched the data scroll across the main screen. The numbers made no sense. The patterns were unlike anything in their database. The ship's artificial intelligence worked frantically to decode the transmission, but kept returning errors. Lisa had commanded the Horizon for 7 years. She had seen strange things in the black emptiness of space. She had encountered species that communicated through light and others that spoke in frequencies humans could not hear. But this signal was different. It felt old. It felt desperate. It felt like something that had been waiting a very long time to be heard. Park stood beside her with his arms crossed over his chest. He was her first officer and her closest friend. They had served together since the early days of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. He trusted her judgment, and she trusted his caution. Right now, his face showed nothing but concern. "The signal is encrypted with mathematics we have never seen before," said. "Our AI estimates it will take another hour to fully decode, but we have already pulled one phrase from the transmission." Lisa turned to face him. "What does it say?" Hesitated, he looked at the screen and then back at her. "It says, please, we are dying. Only humans can help." Silence fell across the bridge. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. Lisa felt a cold sensation run down her spine. No species in the Galactic Union had ever specifically requested human assistance. Humanity was still considered a newcomer to interstellar civilization. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. Most alien species viewed humans as primitive who had somehow stumbled into the stars. They were tolerated but not respected. They were watched but not trusted. "Why would anyone ask specifically for humans?" Lisa said quietly. "It could be a trap." "It could be," agreed, "but there is something else you need to see." He gestured to Dr. Vance, who sat at the science station. Was young for her position but brilliant beyond her years. She had graduated at the top of her class in xenobiology and quantum communications. Her fingers moved across her console, and a new image appeared on the main screen. "I found this buried in the carrier wave of the signal," said. "It contains biological data, genetic sequences and physiological specifications for a species I had to search the oldest archives to identify. The Galactic Union database lists them as extinct for over 10,000 years." Lisa stepped closer to the screen. "What species?" Took a deep breath. In ancient records they were called dragons." The word hung in the air like smoke. Lisa had heard stories about every spacefaring human had. They were legends, myths, tales told by older species to frighten younger ones. The dragons had supposedly ruled the galaxy before the rise of the current civilizations. They were said to be massive creatures of terrible power. Some stories painted them as wise guardians. Others described them as cruel tyrants. All the stories agreed on one thing: they were gone. They had vanished long before humans ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. "That is impossible," said. "They are extinct. Everyone knows that." "Everyone believes that," corrected him. "But I cannot argue with the data. This signal contains genetic markers that match preserved samples in the Union archives. Someone or something with biology sent this message." Lisa made her decision quickly. She had not become a commander by hesitating when the universe offered her a mystery. She turned to her helm officer and spoke with calm authority. "Set a course for the signal's origin point. Maximum speed." Grabbed her arm gently. "Lisa, Union protocols advise against responding to unknown signals. If this is some kind of trap, we could be putting the entire crew at risk." Lisa looked at him steadily. "If there is even a chance that a species thought extinct for 10,000 years is still alive and asking for our help, then I am not going to ignore it. Humanity spent centuries on Earth feeling alone in the universe. We know what it means to cry out and hear nothing but silence. I will not do that to someone else. Held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and released her arm. He understood. That was why they worked so well together. He always understood. The horizon changed course and accelerated toward the unknown. The journey took 3 days. They traveled through regions of space that were poorly mapped and rarely visited. The signal led them toward a nebula that glowed with soft purple light. It was beautiful in a haunting way. It looked like a bruise on the face of the cosmos. As they approached the nebula, their sensors detected something hidden within its swirling gases, a star system. A single yellow sun orbited by 4 planets. 3 of the planets were dead rocks with no atmosphere. The fourth was different. It showed signs of having once supported life. Oceans had carved channels across its surface. Forests had covered its continents. Cities had risen toward its sky. But all of that was gone now. The planet was brown and gray and silent. It was a corpse floating in the void. "There is one life sign on the surface," reported. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It is massive." The sensors initially classified it as a geological formation, but it is alive. It is waiting for us. Lisa stared at the dying world on her screen. She thought about the message that had brought them here. "Please, we are dying. Only humans can help." She did not know what they would find on that planet. She did not know if they could actually help. But she knew they had to try. That was what humans did. They tried even when the odds seemed impossible. They reached out even when they might get burned. "Take us down," Lisa said. "Let us meet our dragon." The horizon descended through the thin atmosphere of the dead world. Below them, the ruins of a civilization stretched from horizon to horizon. Above them, the stars watched in silence. And somewhere in the darkness below, a creature older than human history waited for the help that only they could give. A dragon begged for help. The truth they found was devastating. Part 2. The surface of was worse than the sensors had shown. Commander Lisa Monroe stepped off the landing shuttle and felt her boots sink into gray dust that had once been fertile soil. The air was thin and cold. The sky above was the color of old bone. Nothing moved. Nothing grew. The world was dead in every way that mattered. Around her, the ruins of an ancient civilization rose like broken teeth from the earth. Towers of crystallized metal reached toward the sky, but their tops had been shattered long ago. Buildings that must have been beautiful once now stood hollow and empty. Streets wide enough for giants stretched between the structures. Everything was sized for creatures far larger than humans. Everything spoke of a grandeur that had been deliberately destroyed. Dr. Vance walked beside Lisa with her scanner held in front of her. "The readings are incredible," she said. "This city is at least 12,000 years old. The architecture uses materials we cannot even identify. Whatever lived here was far more advanced than anything in the current Galactic Union." Security Chief Daniel moved ahead of the group with his weapon ready. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but his eyes never stopped moving. He had served in 3 colonial wars before joining the Horizon crew. He knew what danger looked like, and right now his instincts were screaming at him. This place felt wrong. It felt like a grave. Dr. Amy brought up the rear of the group. She was the ship's, and she had spent her entire career studying alien life. But nothing had prepared her for this. She could feel the weight of extinction pressing down on her. An entire species had died here. Their songs and stories and dreams had all turned to dust. She wanted to weep, but she forced herself to keep walking. "The life sign is coming from beneath the central structure," said. She pointed toward the largest ruin in the city. It looked like it had once been a palace or a temple. Its walls were covered in carvings that depicted winged creatures soaring through starlit skies. There appears to be an entrance to a cavern system. The readings suggest the caverns extend for miles beneath the surface. Lisa led them forward. They entered the structure through a doorway that could have accommodated a small spacecraft. Inside, the air grew warmer. Bioluminescent moss clung to the walls and cast a soft blue glow over everything. The deeper they went, the more the architecture changed. The surfaces became smoother. The carvings became more detailed. They were walking into the heart of something sacred. The cavern opened before them like the inside of a cathedral. The ceiling rose hundreds of meters above their heads. Crystals embedded in the rock sparkled like captured stars. And there, at the center of the vast space, lay a creature that made every human legend seem small and pale by comparison. She was enormous, 300 meters from nose to tail at least. Her scales had once been the color of molten gold, but age had dulled them to a soft amber. Her wings were folded against her body, but Lisa could see they were tattered and thin. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow and shallow. She looked like she was waiting to die. The humans stood in silence. None of them could find words. They had come looking for a mystery and found something far more profound. They had found the last of a species. They had found loneliness given physical form. Then the dragon opened her eyes. They were the color of sunrise, orange and red and gold all swirling together like fire trapped behind glass. Those ancient eyes moved across the small group of humans, and something that might have been hope flickered within them. "You came." The voice did not come from the dragon's mouth. It resonated directly inside their minds. It was warm and tired and impossibly sad. Lisa stepped forward. She was trembling, but she refused to let fear stop her. "We received your signal. We came as fast as we could." The dragon lifted her head slowly. The movement seemed to cost her tremendous effort. "I am called. I have waited 3,000 years for someone to answer. I had almost given up hope. But then I sensed your species entering the galaxy. Young and curious and unafraid. I knew you would come. You had not yet learned to fear us." Moved to stand beside Lisa. "Why did you call specifically for humans? Why not any of the other species in the Galactic Union?" Made a sound that might have been a laugh if it were not so full of pain, because the others would never come. The Galactic Union was built on our bones. They erased us from history and taught their children to hate our memory. If any other species received my signal, they would have ignored it or come only to ensure I was truly dead. But humans are new. Humans do not know the old lies. Humans still believe that helping others is good. Doctor wiped tears from her cheeks. "What happened to your people? How did you end up alone?" Lowered her head until her massive eye was level with the small human woman. "That is why I called you. I am dying. I have known this for centuries. But before I die, I need someone to know the truth. The truth about what happened to the truth about the Galactic Union. The truth that has been buried for 10,000 years." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they held a desperate plea. "I need you to witness our story. I need you to remember. I need you to spread the truth to those who will listen. Will you do this for me? Will you do this for my people?" Lisa looked at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw determination. They had not come this far to turn back now. They had not answered a dying dragon's call only to refuse her final request. "We will listen," Lisa said. "We will remember. Tell us everything." Closed her eyes again. When she opened them, they glowed with golden light. The air around her began to shimmer. The humans felt something touch their minds. It was gentle but vast. It was an invitation to see through ancient eyes. Then the world dissolved around them, and they fell into memory. A dragon begged for help. The truth they found was devastating. Part 3. The memories hit them like a wave crashing against a shore. Lisa felt herself falling through time. The gray ruins around her dissolved and were replaced by something magnificent. She stood in the same cavern, but now it was filled with light and life. Crystal formations pulsed with energy. The walls were covered in living art that moved and breathed, and everywhere she looked there were dragons. They came in all colors, red and blue and green and silver. Some were small enough to perch on a human shoulder. Others were larger than starships. They moved through the air with grace that their size. They spoke to each other in a language that sounded like music. They were beautiful. They were alive. They were happy. His voice echoed through the vision. "This was my home 10,000 years ago. We were the first children of the stars. We evolved on a world much like this one, and we learned to touch the minds of others. We developed technology that merged with our natural abilities. We could travel between stars using thought alone. We could shape matter with our will. We could have conquered the entire galaxy. The scene shifted. Lisa saw ships descending onto barren worlds, but they did not come with weapons. They came with seeds and soil and hope. She watched dragons work for centuries to transform dead rocks into living gardens. She saw them guide young species through their first steps toward civilization. She saw them protect primitive worlds from asteroid impacts and solar flares and cosmic radiation. But we did not conquer, continued. We chose instead to nurture. We believed that life was sacred. We believed that every species deserved the chance to grow and learn and reach for the stars on their own terms. We asked for nothing in return. We wanted only to see the galaxy flourish. Stood beside Lisa in the vision. His face was wet with tears he did not remember shedding. They were guardians, he whispered. They were not monsters at all. The vision changed again. Now Lisa saw a species she did not recognize. They were tall and thin with gray skin and large, dark eyes. They moved with quick, nervous energy. They built cities of black stone and ships of gleaming metal. They called themselves the Collective. They were one of the species we helped, said. We protected their world from destruction when they were young. We taught them how to travel between stars. We welcomed them as partners in our great work. But they wanted more than partnership. They wanted power. They wanted to rule. Lisa watched the leaders gather in secret chambers. She saw them study with cold, calculating eyes. She heard them discuss how the dragon's power made them nervous. She listened as they planned a betrayal that would take centuries to complete. They could not defeat us in open war, explained. Our technology was too advanced. Our minds were too strong. So they chose a different path. They chose lies. The vision showed agents spreading across the galaxy. They visited every species that had helped. They whispered poison into willing ears. They told stories of dragon cruelty. They fabricated evidence of atrocities. They paid scientists to create false historical records. They bribed leaders to speak against their former protectors. It took them 500 years, said. Her voice cracked with ancient grief. 500 years of patient deception. By the end, almost every species in the galaxy believed we were tyrants. They believed we had manipulated them. They believed our gifts were chains. The truth did not matter anymore. Only the lie remained. Dr. Vance made a sound of anguish. Lisa looked at her and saw that the young scientist was shaking with rage. How could they do this? How could they destroy something so beautiful with nothing but lies? The vision showed the war, a coalition of species led by the descended on worlds. They came with weapons designed specifically to kill dragons. They came with hatred in their hearts and righteousness on their tongues. They believed they were liberating the galaxy. They believed they were heroes. We could have fought back, said. We could have destroyed them all. Our power was greater than they knew. But how could we raise our claws against the children we had nurtured? How could we burn the worlds we had helped create? We chose instead to retreat. We gathered on our and raised a planetary shield. We hoped that time would reveal the truth. We hoped that reason would prevail. The vision turned dark. Lisa watched centuries of bombardment. She saw the shield flicker and fail in places. She saw dragons die from radiation that leaked through the cracks. She saw the atmosphere turn toxic. She saw forests wither and oceans boil away. She saw a species that had given everything to the galaxy receive only death in return. They never stopped, whispered. For 1,000 years they bombarded our world. They did not want our surrender, they wanted our extinction. And eventually they got what they wanted. We died one by one. Parents watched their children wither. Lovers held each other as the poison took them. In the end there was only me, the youngest, the last, alone in the ruins of everything we had built. The vision faded. Lisa found herself back in the dark cavern standing before the ancient dragon. Her face was wet with tears. Her heart felt like it had been torn apart and put back together wrong. She looked at her crew and saw the same devastation reflected in their eyes. Daniel, the hardened soldier who rarely showed emotion, stood with his fists clenched so tight that blood dripped from his palms. Doctor had fallen to her knees and was sobbing openly, stared at nothing with hollow eyes. "Now you know," said. "Now you carry the truth. The Galactic Union was built on genocide. The founders of your interstellar civilization murdered an entire species because they were afraid of our power and jealous of our purpose. Everything they told you about thee is a lie. We were never your enemies. We only ever wanted to help." Lisa stepped forward until she could place her hand against the dragon's massive cheek. The scales were warm beneath her fingers. "We believe you," she said, "and we will make sure the galaxy knows what really happened. I swear it on my life." Closed her eyes. A single tear the size of a human head rolled down her cheek and crystallized into a gem that fell to the ground. "Thank you," she whispered, "but there is more I must show you, a secret I have guarded for 3,000 years, my people's last hope. Will you follow me one more time?" Lisa did not hesitate. "Lead the way." A dragon begged for help. The truth they found was devastating. Part 4. The weight of truth pressed down on the humans like a physical force. Commander Lisa Monroe stood in the dim glow of the cavern and felt something fundamental shift inside her. She had grown up learning about the Galactic Union as a beacon of civilization. She had been taught that humanity was lucky to be accepted into such an enlightened community. Now she knew it was all built on the bones of murdered innocents. Park paced back and forth across the stone floor. His usual calm had shattered. How do we proceed with this information? If we report what we have learned, the Union will deny everything. They have controlled the narrative for 10,000 years. Who would believe a handful of humans over the entire galactic establishment? Dr. Vance was downloading data from telepathic projections into her portable unit. She worked with frantic energy as if afraid the truth might slip away if she did not capture every detail. "We have evidence," she said. "We have genetic markers that prove they existed. We have memories that show exactly what happened. We have the testimony of the last surviving witness." Testimony from a species the Union claims was dangerous and deserved destruction, countered. "They will say is lying. They will say she manipulated our minds. They will say humans are too naive to understand galactic politics." Daniel spoke for the first time since the vision ended. His voice was quiet but hard as iron. "Then we make them understand. We do not ask for permission. We do not beg for belief. We find others who doubt the official story. We build alliances. We spread the truth one species at a time until the lie cannot hold anymore." Dr. Amy had finally stopped crying. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, but her eyes burned with determination. There must be other species who suspect the truth. The Union is not universally loved. Younger civilizations chafe under control. If we can reach them before the Union silences us, we might have a chance. Lisa listened to her crew debate and felt a swell of pride. They were not running from this burden. They were not trying to protect themselves by burying what they had learned. They were already planning how to fight back. That was what made humans special. They did not accept injustice. They did not bow before power. They found a way to resist even when the odds seemed impossible. Watched them with her ancient golden eyes. A faint smile curved her massive mouth. "I knew I chose correctly," she said. "I sense the fire in your species from across the galaxy. You are young, but you are brave. You have not yet learned to compromise your principles for safety. That is why I called you. That is why you came." Lisa turned to face the dragon. "You said there was something more to show us, a secret you have guarded for 3,000 years. What is it?" Shifted her enormous body. The movement was slow and painful, but she managed to lift herself onto her legs. She towered above the humans like a mountain made flesh. Her wings spread slightly and dust fell from them like snow. "Follow me," she said. "It is not far, but it is the most important thing I have left to give." She moved deeper into the cavern system. The humans followed in awed silence. The tunnels grew narrower and then wider again. Strange crystals lined the walls and pulsed with light as passed. It was as if the very stones recognized their last guardian and paid tribute to her. They walked for nearly an hour. The air grew warmer. The crystals grew brighter. Lisa could feel something ahead of them, a presence, a potential, something waiting to be discovered. Finally, they emerged into a chamber so vast that their lights could not reach the ceiling. The floor was covered in a thick layer of protective gel that sparkled like liquid diamond, and embedded in that gel were thousands upon thousands of crystalline spheres. Each sphere was about 2 meters in diameter. Each sphere glowed with soft inner light, and inside each sphere Lisa could see a shape curled in on itself, small wings folded tight, tiny claws pressed against transparent walls, faces that were peaceful in dreamless sleep. "Dragon eggs," Doctor breathed. "They are dragon eggs." Settled onto the ground near the edge of the chamber. Her eyes moved across the field of sleeping embryos with a love so deep it hurt to witness. "Not eggs," she said, "embryos in stasis, preserved before they could hatch. When we realized the war was lost, our scientists worked in secret. They could not save the adults. The poison had already done too much damage, but they could save the next generation. They designed these chambers to keep the embryos alive indefinitely. They hid them beneath miles of rock where no scanner could find them. They hoped that someday someone would come, someone who could give our children a future." Stared at the glowing spheres with wonder on his face. "How many are there?" 4,216, replied. "The last children of the. They have slept for 10,000 years waiting for a chance to live." Was already scanning the nearest sphere. "The stasis technology is incredible. It is far beyond anything we have. But the awakening protocols appear to be damaged. I cannot read them properly." The technology to revive them was destroyed in the bombardment, confirmed. "I have spent 3,000 years trying to repair it. I have failed. My knowledge is incomplete. My strength is fading. I cannot give my children life, but perhaps you can." Lisa felt the weight of what was being offered. This was not just information or evidence. This was responsibility on a scale she could barely comprehend. An entire species was being placed in human hands. "Why us?" she asked. "We are the newcomers. We are the primitives. Every other species in the galaxy has more advanced technology than we do." His eyes met hers with profound certainty. "Because you are stubborn, because you do not accept impossible, because when someone tells you something cannot be done, you find a way to do it anyway. I have watched species rise and fall across this galaxy. I have seen empires built on genius crumble into dust, but I have never seen a species quite like yours. You adapt. You persist. You refuse to surrender. If anyone can unlock the stasis technology, it is humans." The dragon's voice grew weaker. Lisa could see her life force fading with each word. "I transfer guardianship to you," said, "not because you are powerful, not because you are wise, but because you came when no one else would, because you listened when no one else cared, because you still believe that right and wrong matter. Take my children, protect them. Give them the future that was stolen from us." Lisa stepped forward and placed both hands on the dragon's lowered head. She could feel the ancient heart beating beneath the scales. It was slowing. It was failing, but it was still fighting. "We accept this responsibility," Lisa said. "We will protect your children with our lives. We will find a way to wake them. We will give them a galaxy worth living in. I swear it on everything I am." Smiled. Her eyes began to close. For the first time in 3,000 years there was peace in her expression. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving an old dragon hope at the end of all things." And then she was still. A dragon begged for help. The truth they found was devastating. Part 5. The death of was not like anything the humans had witnessed before. Her massive body did not decay or grow cold. Instead, it began to glow from within. The light spread through her scales like fire through dry grass. It was not destruction. It was transformation. Over the course of several hours, the last dragon crystallized into a formation of gems more beautiful than anything nature had ever created. Rubies and sapphires and emeralds and diamonds, all woven together in the shape of the guardian, who had waited 3,000 years for help to arrive. Commander Lisa Monroe stood before the crystal monument and made a silent promise. She would not let this sacrifice be forgotten. She would not let this trust be betrayed. Whatever it took and however long it required, she would see the reborn. The journey back to human space took 2 weeks. Lisa used that time to plan. She consulted with her crew. She organized the evidence. She rehearsed what she would say to the United Earth Council. The embryos remained unprotected by automated defenses that had maintained for. They would be safe until humanity could return with the resources to move them. The council chamber on Earth was a vast circular room filled with representatives from every human colony. Lisa stood at the center and told them everything. She showed them the memories. She presented the genetic evidence. She described the hidden chamber and its precious cargo. When she finished, there was silence. It stretched for what felt like hours. Then the debate began. Some council members wanted to bury the information. They argued that humanity was too vulnerable. The Galactic Union could destroy human civilization if they felt threatened. Why risk everything for a dead species? Why invite the wrath of powers that had exterminated the without mercy? Others disagreed with fierce passion. They argued that truth mattered more than safety. They argued that humanity had not crawled out of caves and reached for the stars only to become cowards. They argued that the memory of deserved better than silence. The debate lasted for 3 months. In the end, humanity chose the harder path. They did not confront the Galactic Union directly. They were not foolish enough to invite immediate retaliation. Instead, they began a quiet campaign of truth. Human diplomats made contact with younger species who had their own doubts about Union history. Human scientists shared the genetic evidence with researchers who were willing to listen. Human storytellers spread the tale of across every world where humans had influence. The process was slow. It took years for the first cracks to appear in the official narrative. A historian on one world discovered inconsistencies in the Union's records. A scientist on another confirmed that the genetic markers were authentic. A philosopher on a third began asking uncomfortable questions about how the Union had been founded. Meanwhile, on Earth, the greatest minds of humanity worked on the stasis technology. They studied the damaged protocols. They reverse-engineered what they could. They experimented and failed and experimented again. 50 years passed. The scientists who began the work grew old and died. New generations took their place. The work continued. Lisa Monroe did not live to see the breakthrough. She died 43 years after meeting, surrounded by her crew who had become her family. But her granddaughter was there on the day the first embryo was successfully revived. The little dragon emerged from her crystal shell confused and frightened. She cried out for a mother who had been dust for 10,000 years, but human hands caught her gently. Human voices soothed her fears. Human hearts welcomed her into a galaxy that had tried to forget her kind. They named her Hope. Over the next decade, more embryos were awakened. Each revival was a triumph. Each new dragon was a miracle. They grew quickly and learned even faster. The humans taught them about the galaxy as it was now. The dragons taught the humans about the galaxy as it should be. Together, they formed a bond that transcended species. The collective watched these developments with growing alarm. They tried to suppress the truth, but it had spread too far. They tried to intimidate humanity, but found that humans did not intimidate easily. They considered war, but discovered that too many species now stood with the humans. The coalition they had built on lies was crumbling. 75 years after the Horizon first answered a desperate signal, the Galactic Assembly convened to hear testimony about the true history of the. Representatives from 100 species filled the chamber. In the center stood a young dragon with scales the color of sunrise. Beside her stood a human woman who carried the blood of Lisa Monroe in her veins. The dragon spoke with a voice that resonated in every mind present. She told the story of her people. She described their gifts and their guardianship. She explained how they had been betrayed and murdered. She did not ask for vengeance. She asked only for acknowledgement. She asked only for truth. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then one representative began to applaud. Then another. Then 100. The sound built until it shook the walls. Species that had believed the lies wept with shame. Species that had suspected the truth wept with relief. The representatives sat in stunned silence as their empire of deception collapsed around them. The resolution passed unanimously. They were officially recognized as victims of genocide. Their history was restored. Their memory was honored. The collective was stripped of its founding status, and its leaders were called to answer for ancient crimes. In the aftermath, humanity's status in the galaxy transformed completely. They were no longer seen as primitive newcomers. They were celebrated as the species brave enough to answer when no one else would. The species stubborn enough to seek truth when lies were easier. The species compassionate enough to adopt orphaned children not their own. On a memorial was built around the crystallized remains of. Dragons young and old made pilgrimages there to honor the guardian who had waited in darkness for 3,000 years. Humans came too to pay respect to the being who had trusted them with everything. A statue of Lisa Monroe stood at the entrance to the memorial. The inscription at its base was simple. She listened. She believed. She acted. The dragons never forgot what humanity had done for them. The humans never forgot what the dragons had taught them. Together, they worked to build a galaxy worthy of the sacrifice that had made their friendship possible. They protected younger species. They nurtured developing worlds. They carried forward the dream that had kept alive through of loneliness. And somewhere across the stars, the spirit of an old dragon smiled. Her children were home. Her truth was known. Her faith in the strange, stubborn species called humanity had been rewarded beyond her wildest hopes. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.